children and families. The meeting today is open to the public, and welcome to everyone who's made the effort to attend today. There are no items on the agenda that are exempt, that contain exempt information. The meeting will be webcast, so good morning to everyone watching us this morning, and it is available for people to view later through the Council's website. It's also possible that Sheffield Live TV could record and rebroadcast this meeting. We've received 2 public agenda related questions. Please can I request that all mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent as to not disturb the meeting. There is no fire test planned for today, so if there is an emergency evacuation, please follow Town Hall staff to the assembly point in Tudor Square. And now I will go around and ask each member of the committee to introduce themselves in turn, and I'll start this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malachi Hebe for Bromhill and Shattle Vale.
Councillor Toby Mallinson, Hillsborough.
Councillor Anne Wishaker, West Ecclesfield Ward.
Mohammed Maroof, Graves Park.
Councillor Steve Ayres, Graves Park Ward, and I'm substituting for Councillor Atkinson.
Councillor Nigar Bashara, Netheridge and Sharrow Ward.
Councillor Rob Bannister, Graves Park Ward.
Councillor Talibus and Burngrave Ward.
Thank you, members. And as Councillor Ayres alluded to, we've got apologies from Councillor Atkinson today. And just again, I'm Councillor Dale, Chair of this committee and Councillor for Shire Green and Brightside Ward. As I alluded to before, there are no items of exemption on this agenda. We do have several members of the public expecting to attend. Again, I think some more may have just arrived. Thank you for that. Do any members in this meeting have any interest that they need to declare? No. Thank you very much. And so if you go to page 11 on your agendas, I've got the minutes from the previous meeting. I'm hoping that everyone has read those and can approve that they are a correct account of the previous meeting. Thank you. Okay, we go to item number 5 on the agenda now, which is public petitions, questions and statements. I've got 2 questions from members of the public. One from Sally Byers, who is unable to attend today and has requested a written response, which will be sent to her in line with procedure. And I have a question from Emily Griffiths, who is attending remotely. So if we could open the meeting to her, thank you. Hello, Emily, can you hear us? Great. Emily, if we've just done introductions, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then ask your question, thank you. If you're having technical difficulties, I can read it for you, if that's all right. Yeah, okay. So I can read that on your behalf. Thank you. So the question that we received from Emily says that she is the Parent Governor and Deputy Chair of the Board of Governors at Lidget Junior School. And the question is, why does high needs SEND funding fall short in mainstream schools? When children are placed in special schools, Sheffield City Council pay the special school to cover the support the child needs. When children with special educational needs are placed in a mainstream school, there is a top-up, but schools do not receive adequate funding to support the child's needs outlined in the EHCP. The EHCPs created before September 2024 have still not been banded for attached funding. Therefore, Lidget Junior School have had to cover the costs without the additional funding to support it, furthering the school's SEND budget into deficit. At Lidget Juniors, to meet our statutory requirements to fulfil the EHCPs of children joining in September this year, we need to adapt facilities and hire 3 additional full-time staff. This will cost over £60,000 and doubles the whole school budget deficit that we face this year. When the council finds places for children with EHCPs, could it please fund the costs of supporting children appropriately, whatever the kind of school? Are you all right, happy with that, Emily? Okay, thank you. So in response to your question, Emily, in line with the current regulations, local authorities are required to fund the provision specified in a pupil's education, health and care plan, regardless of whether the child attends a special or mainstream school. In Sheffield, we're currently implementing a banded funding model to support pupils with EHC plans in mainstream schools, and we recognise that this is an ongoing development. In 2024-25 academic year has served as a transitional period for EHC plans issued after September 2024. The banded funding model is already in place. However, the EHC plans issued prior to September 2024, the previous funding model remains in effect. As a result, schools have received funding allocations directly from the local authority for pupils with existing plans. All pre-September 2024 plans have now been banded, and from September 2025 onwards, these will be funded according to the agreed banding levels. We have reviewed the banding allocations for pupils attending Legit Junior School and will be contacting the school shortly to provide an update on our progress. We are committed to working closely with the school to ensure the allocations are refined if needed. In addition, we are collaborating with schools across the city to address any questions regarding the funding processes, band allocations and how the new model will be implemented in the coming year. We are also finalising a funding model to support pupils with high needs who do not have an EHC plan. This information will be shared with schools soon, and we appreciate your patience and understanding as we continue to improve our SEND funding system. Is that okay, Emily? Thank you. I will send this out to you in writing as well so that you can feed that back to your colleagues at Legit. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item now number 6 on the agenda is members' questions, which we've received none. And so we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is the work programme on page 19, and I'll pass over to Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The work programme is laid out from page 19 of the main agenda pack. On page 20, you will see a set of recommendations. There's 2 that we will be asking the committee to agree. I would like to draw your attention particularly to page 22 under section 4, where there are proposed additions and amendments to the work programme since the last meeting. So you can see that there's quite a few changes there, but in the notes column you can see where things have gone to and why they've moved. I'd also like to highlight that for the next municipal year there are plans for a work programming day, half a day, with members and with the committee to discuss what's going on that work programme, and that's to be worked up in due course. You will be able to see on page 25, Appendix 1, what's laid out for today's meeting, and you will see that meeting 1 of the next municipal year and meeting 2 of the next municipal year do look empty for now, but I'll just relate to what I've just said, where there will be plans for some dedicated time for us all to go through that as a collaborative effort to get the work programme laid out for the next municipal year. So I would be passing back to Chair to get those recommendations approved and agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this before we move on to recommendations? Councillor Mallington.
It just be used, there's 2 topics which haven't got a date, which are transitions, which are obviously crucial, and we'll be talking a bit about later in relation to special needs, but also the all-age autism strategy delivery update, which has been going for a couple of years, but we don't know where it is, and it covers children and that transitions as well. So just an update on what's happening with those would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mallington. Meredith?
Thank you, Councillor Mallinson. So the all-age autism strategy is at the moment timetabled to go to Adults Committee in June, and will also come here. What we're looking for as well is that whether that moves to September, so that we can give a full update on what is happening around the children's system, around neurodiversity. There is a fortnightly senior leader strategic meeting taking place, which is looking at addressing a number of issues which have arisen around waiting times for neurodiversity, and by September a number of those will be actioned and in place, and will be a really opportune time to update you as committee exactly what has happened and what is planned to be done over the coming year as well. So I'm looking for that to happen. Transitions, I agree, and we will make sure that transitions is on an early committee agenda item.
Thank you, Meredith. Councillor Manninson, do you want to come back?
Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendations are that this committee's work programme as an appendix 1 be agreed, including any additions and amendments identified in paragraph 4 of the report and any agreed by members at the meeting. That referrals from council and committees, petitions and resolutions detailed in paragraph 2 of the report be noted and the proposed responses sent out to be agreed. Do we all agree? Thank you. Okay, so now we go to page 27 of the agenda, which is the school's calendar, and we've got John Bigley presenting today. Can I ask officers when you speak actually to introduce yourselves as well? Thank you.
Good morning, I'm John Bigley, I'm Manager for Admissions and Access in Education and Skills. The report on page 27 is the annual consultation and determination of the school calendar. This is for the 26-27 academic year. The council is responsible for the school calendar in community schools and voluntary controlled schools. Schools such as academies and voluntary aided schools may set their own, but typically they do tend to follow this model. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on the school calendar? No? That was short and sweet then, John, wasn't it? So recommendations for this item is that we approve the school calendar for 2026-27 academic year. I'm sure we've all had a look at it. And do we all agree? Thank you, that's agreed. Thank you, John. Which brings us swiftly on to agenda item number 9, which our guests have come to hear us speak on, which is the post-16 Freedom to Travel, Skills for Life, discretionary SEN home to school travel policy. We've got officers coming today to speak on this. That's Mark Shake and Paul Johnson, who have got a presentation for us, I believe, and everyone is just... And at this point, I would just like to welcome Gaynor Stevenson, who is a parent of a young person who has been in receipt of independent travel training and would like to speak to members about that as well. So, Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mark Sheikh. I'm Head of Service responsible for resourcing across children's services. And to give an update to the committee, I think I've got a slide presentation. So if you can just put it on the screen, please. The clicker is finally working, so apologies for that. I think it's good to remind committee as to what our vision is, what we are trying to achieve. The ARCH captures a number of travel options that are available to parents in the city. And from left to right, the ARCH captures the increasing level of support. So on the right-hand side of the ARCH, individual taxi with assistant is the maximum level of support we can provide as a city to young people. On the left-hand side of the ARCH is the maximum independence that needs to be actually achieved during the time the child is within the school system. So our vision is, while the children are within the school system, they need to be moving from, depending on their individual circumstances, from the right-hand side of the arch towards the left-hand side of the arch. It is not only the right thing to do in terms of outcome, excuse me, but it's also preparing them for adulthood as well, and making sure they've got the necessary skills ready for when they are going out into the wider world. In terms of, I think, the background, so the committee received a paper on 18th of December. At that committee, it was agreed that we will carry out a consultation on post 16, which is a discretionary element of travel support. And it was agreed that we will consult whether personal travel budget should become a default option for post 16 students. And we will only, the proposal was we will only provide other forms of transport in exceptional circumstances. So consultation took place during January and February. We had very strong engagement on our consultation. We got 975 responses from parent carers, young people, schools and colleges. During the consultation and through the consultation, significant concerns were highlighted by various stakeholders. I think the key concern coming through was respondents felt that personal travel budget is not practical for their own individual circumstances. Some felt that it will be financially burdensome. There were also issues around safety and whether with public transport would be able to provide the level of safety the parents were looking for. Some respondents felt that the proposal was more cost-cutting rather than in the best interest of young people and SEND. One of the issues which came through quite strongly from school was the impact on traffic congestion. As more and more parents start to drop their children, whether the school system or the school will be able to cope with the level of traffic coming through. There were some good alternative suggestions coming through as part of the consultation, and while most responses were expressing concern about it, a minority supported that the proposal around personal travel budget will be right for them as a family. So based on the strong feedback we got, I think it became very clear that the consultation felt that we need to tailor support to individual circumstances for individual child. And now tying that feedback with our vision around making sure throughout the duration the child is in the school system, we are maximizing their independence. We had to go back and look at our proposal, and what I'm presenting to the committee is a revised proposal, which allows for greater choice and control, and still make sure that we are pursuing independence for those young people in the longer term. So what we're proposing is that for existing post-16 or Y11 students currently accessing SEND support, personal travel budgets will be introduced as an optional choice. So we are no longer pursuing that as a default choice. It will be optional. If parents wish to take it up, they can actually have a personal travel budget. However, if the parents wish for the existing arrangements to continue, existing arrangements will continue. I think the only qualifier would be if the child is ready for independent travel training, we will encourage that on top of taxi or minibus, they also engage with independent travel training in preparation for adulthood. For students not currently accessing SEN transport support who are new now applying, so these are the families of young people who have never had transport. I think the proposal is that they will be offered PTB as a first offer. Again, other form of transport would be available if they do not want personal travel budget. And again, that arrangement will not have to go through an appeals process. It will be a matter of engaging with our travel support team to engage and say, well, personal travel budget doesn't work for them. Are there other form of travel available that the family could choose? Through our application process, we will make sure that personal travel budgets, we are providing sufficient information to families to make those decisions. The second proposal is that we want to expand our independent travel training. We've already got Freedom to Travel, Skills for Life program, and what we want to do is further develop that and expand it to make sure enhanced independent travel training is available for post-16 students. We initially will focus on post-16 students, and then we want to expand that to pre-16 to make sure the Y9s, Y10, Y11s are being prepared before they reach a post-16 age. We've got an investment, a business case ready. I think I will talk about that. And I think on the back of that business case, we want to increase our capacity by 12 independent travel trainers, bringing our overall strength to 17. And finally, the third proposal is we are proposing that we go out for consultation with a view that we increase the level of fees currently post-16 parents are providing, and any future increases will be reviewed on an ongoing basis. That is not a decision for the committee to be made today. I think the decision we will be requesting is to go out and consult, and the outcome of that consultation will be brought back in September. So what is Freedom to Travel Skills for Life program? It is designed to equip young people with confidence, skill, and knowledge to make sure that they are independently traveling, that public transport is accessible to those young people. Initially, we will target post-16, and then over time, we will extend it to pre-16 children, as I said, Y9s, Y10s, and Y11s. There are benefits for doing this, again, making sure that we are teaching the young people skills for life. As they enter into adulthood, they feel self-sufficient and they're independent to travel. It opens up access to employment, training, apprenticeship, work placements. It also promotes social inclusion, personal development for the young people, and overall, it reduces expectation and pressure on families because the young people are independently travel. Now, that is only applicable for those young people who are ready. It's not something that we will push for if the young people are not ready for independent travel training. And finally, as I said, we are in early stages of discussion with SIMCA, South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, with the business case to recruit 12 travel trainers to bring our capacity to 17. It will be a 2-year program. We will test it and see the possibility and actually the need for even expanding that across the region. I think that's our submission to SIMCA, that this will yield results for the young people, and if the mayor authority agree, then that could be something that could be piloted across the region. I'll just invite now Gaynor to just give you a view on and how independent travel training has worked for her family actually, and just share what your thoughts are.
Well, my son is 20. His name is Robert. He is hoping to go to university in September. We've been doing travel training since late October, early November of last year. Just to give you a quick sort of where he was and where we were before we did travel training, he never had been on public transport on his own at all, without a sibling or an adult or a member of staff from wherever he was at school. So he'd never been anywhere at all. He hadn't even walked around the corner and gone to the corner shop on his own. So that's where we were coming from. Now we're about two-thirds of the way through the scheme. 2 days a week now, he's independently travelling back and forth to sixth form. And we're working our way slowly to increasing that to 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, so that by the time he finishes sixth form, he will be travelling independent every day. For Robert, if you asked him, it's improved his confidence. It's giving him a sense of self-worth. It's enabled him. So he's going to go, well, hopefully, he's going to go to university in September. And because he will be taking himself there and back, it will also allow him to access all those things at university that we all take for granted. So the social scene, the clubs, everything. I'll give an example of how things have moved forward. So last week, for the first time ever, he said, on the way home, I'm going to do some shopping. So he added on other activities. So he came into town, he went and did some shopping, picked some things up, rang me up and said, I'm going to be about 20 minutes late, got on the bus and came home. That is massive, absolutely massive, for somebody who has never done anything like that before. And it's going to open his life up. It's going to open his life up socially. It's going to open his life up. It's going to enable him. He's going to have those job opportunities, those further education opportunities that would have been very difficult for him to access. And for us as parents, I have been a taxi driver for the last however I've known. You know, it has tied us in our life for such a long time. And I've got two other sons at sort of 14, 15 and 16. They would have been taking themselves off. They would have been doing clubs and activities. I have taken Robert to every single thing he's ever been involved in. We have gone from, I can see him becoming an adult, and the change in him has been absolutely huge. I think one of the issues my son has sometimes is that because he's on the autistic spectrum and people have met him, he comes over as a very bright, intelligent, articulate person. He doesn't come across as somebody who needs support. But underneath all that is a bit like a duck. There's a lot of flapping going on underneath. You know, there's a lot of support needs that he's got. And so that's really what I've come to say. This scheme has made a huge difference to his life, massively so. And in the end, it's a win-win situation. It's a win for us, it's a win for him, and it's a win for the council as well.
Thank you, Gaynor. I really appreciate you coming today, because I've had the pleasure of meeting you before, but I know other members have not had a chance to speak to you before. But if I could just ask a question of, as a parent of Robert, who's had all of the caring responsibilities and the support, what was the process about travel training like for you as a parent around your anxieties?
Absolutely terrifying. The thought of him going out on public transport on his own. Okay? Then first couple of weeks, you know, Sean, who was his travel trainer, came, he built a relationship with Robert, he gained his trust and his confidence. And initially he was out with him every day, you know, learning the route. And what they do is slowly draw back from them to a point where he was only on the phone and Rob could contact him on the phone. And that first time that he left our house and I knew that there was nobody there, which was a couple of weeks ago, because now he's travelling on his own, ooh, I've never cleaned my cupboard so much, you know. Because you waited, I said to him, will you let me know, you know, when you've got there? And it was like a few minutes and then a few more minutes, and I'm thinking, don't panic, stay calm. So I tidied up, I did all sorts to put me off, you know, stepping in there. But he did it. And then each week we've seen a little bit more of him. You know, he's moving forward. But it is a scary thing, and when I've talked to other parents about it, I understand some of the concerns of parents of worrying about letting their young person go. You know, they're vulnerable people. You worry about all the things that could happen while they're out there, but it's just taking that first step is a bit, yeah, it's a bit terrifying, yeah.
Thank you, Gaynor. Have any other members got any questions for Gaynor? No? Thank you. Oh, yeah, Councillor Mallington.
Well, it's not really a question for Gaynor, but it's just to add my personal experience as well. I've got a son with autism who's actually very similar age, he's 22 now. But 10 years ago, when he was going to secondary school, we were on the edge of him going to a special provision. We were allocated Forge Valley, which is across Melling Bridge roundabout, a horrendous traffic route to navigate. We didn't trust him to cross a road at the age of 11 at all. And we were offered travel training, which was fantastic because over the summer, that's some holidays before he started school, the travel training not just gave him the confidence, it gave us the confidence as parents to allow him the freedom to be able to travel on his own, and he has done so safely ever since. You know, and I don't know where it would be if we hadn't had that. I've also taught in special education. I've taken classes from Bent's Green on buses and stuff. But that's not the same. That's a whole class. It's like a school trip. It's giving them an experience, but it's not that individualised training, which is so important, because it is very hard for parents to take that step themselves, as well as for the young person to take that step, and having a trusted professional to help with that is really, really useful. I would just urge that you know, there needs to be safeguards. As I say, I've taught in special education in the past, and there's many young people who aren't ready for it, and it's so important that the assessment process is fair, reasonable, and doesn't allow anyone to fall through the gaps or to be excluded from education because they simply can't do it. But on the other hand, it does need an approach which brings both parents and young people out and gets them to consider what they might not have considered before.
Yeah, again.
About the service, very often as a parent, professionals do things to us. You know, they offer things and they're doing it to us. The travel service didn't do it to us, they did it with us. And that is a big difference. And like you're talking about, when that person is ready for it, all the way through, they have gone on what Robert is ready for. So at the moment, he doesn't feel quite ready to progress in the next couple of weeks to go in every single day. He's got A-level exams. He said, I don't think I can cope with the A-level exam and the travel all on the same day. So for the next couple of weeks, when he's doing his A-level exams, he's going to have some transport, because for his anxiety, he knows how much he can take on in a day. But then once we've gone past their exams, he's looking forward to moving forward. And they've listened to him, and we've got that plan in place. So they are following, rather than being done to, they are following along with us. It's not right for every student, and it might never be right for some students because of the complexity of need. But I do think for those students that are ready for it, it's that next step. I was just saying, yesterday I went to my son's ECHP review, and I was speaking there and I was talking to them about travel training. I was saying it would be good if the travel training discussion was brought up at each ECHP review meeting to talk, so that we are planning forward, so that we're looking forward to the future. It might be that, you know, in comprehensive level, that they might not be quite ready for that yet, but I think that subject needs bringing up each time so that we're moving forward all the time.
Thank you, Gaynor. Thank you for sharing. Councillor Bashra.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think as you was speaking from the early stages and to where Robert is and how it's helping you, I think it kind of like from the way you expressed as well, I could see, you know, how joyful it was, the experience and where you're getting to. I think you've answered one of the questions where it's about working with the parents, not actually putting something to yourselves. So that was really pleasing to hear. I just wanted to ask, you know, the first step, the early stages when building that relationship with Robert, how that, because obviously every parent with these circumstances, it could be very, very hard to actually move to that first step, the relationship building. How soon did he?
Up to you. They do a risk assessment, so they talk about all the issues that you're worried about. So for Robert has another complication. He has seizures, and that was a big worry to me. how they were going to deal with that, how they were going to cope. Robert has strategies in place for him that he's gone through with Sean about what to do. Sometimes he knows he's going to have a seizure, where to go and find a safe place in town, who to approach for assistance. One of the things we've done, he has a medical alert bracelet that we discussed that he wears, so that if he collapsed in town, somebody would be aware of the fact that he was ill. We went through all the different scenarios of what could happen, even to the point where one particular day they went out and Sean sat back and he said, I knew he was going to miss the bus stop. And they went on 3 stops more than they should, but he let him so that they could explore what are you going to do if you fell asleep on the bus. So you know when you're in your book, what you were going to do, how we're going to deal with this situation. You know, he's explored all those different scenarios so that he's got strategies in place. And for me as a parent, that is what I need to know. I need to know that somebody has thought about everything that might affect him. So the other thing Robert has is he has a great difficulty of not joining in other people's conversations on the bus. So he's talked to him about zoning off, about how to distract himself, how to take him away from a situation. And he said to me the day, I came home on the bus, Mum, and there was a woman and she was shouting and swearing at the bus driver and whatever. And I said, I felt very uncomfortable. And I said, well, how do you think you could have dealt with that? What do you think would have been better? I could have moved farther back down the bus, or I could have gone upstairs. And he said, I need to remind myself that it's not my responsibility to deal with that on the bus. That's the bus driver's responsibility. So, you know, it is scary. It's very scary thinking they're out there, but we're getting there. We're getting there. With that support, he is becoming an adult. You know, it's taken him a long time. He's 20. He's probably, most of the time, he's about 18 months behind developmentally, you know, with how he is. But I can see a future for him. There was a point in our lives when he was much younger where having to think more than a year in front was a very difficult, painful thing to do. Now I can see where we're going forward. I can see, you know, where he's going to be. I can even see possibly independent living at some point.
Thank you, Gaynor. Does any members now have you got any more presentation, Mark? No. So have we now got questions for officers? Councillor Whittaker.
A few questions on the independent travel training. You mentioned that you've got a business case ready to go to Simca. So what's the timescale? When will that be going? What do we think the chances of actually being successful in getting the funding? And how long would it take if we were successful to get that funding? And how long would recruitment and training take for those extra travel trainers? So that's...
So with Sinca, we already had initial conversation. The business case has been shared. So I think we're waiting on the timeline come back from the Mayor's Authority. What we are doing in parallel is we are already recruiting. We are already getting the process agreed to recruit. And as a local authority, we will proceed as an investor safe proposal on the basis that we will recruit those 12 travel trainers. I think it's quite a large group that we need to recruit. So I think we're hoping that we can recruit all of them in one recruitment round. However, highly unlikely that will happen. So we might have to do 2 recruitment rounds. It takes about 4 to 5 months to train our independent travel trainer to be able to work independently. So we are expecting it from September, October time, that if we recruit within the next month or so, we can have some independent travel trainers ready to train from September, October time. Now, last time when we recruited 3 or 4, we got 25 applicants against the 3 or 4 recruitments. So I'm hoping we will have some similar kind of response. But our expectation is we might have to do it in 2 rounds.
Can I just come back? So if you're saying that you'd hope to recruit them sort of September time, and then presumably they won't be operational, you said 4 or 5 months, so we're looking at next year. Because the way Gaynor is described, they clearly have lots of training, don't they? And so it will be next year before they would come into, you know, where we get more young people trained in travelling and things.
Yes, I think it will be flexible. If you recruit quicker, we will have those travel trainers available earlier. We've already got 5 travel trainers in our existing organisation, so that is still happening. I think a couple of those have left, so we are replacing them at the moment. I will say, if you go out to the ad with the recruitment process, you're right. I think it will be August, September time when they actually start, and then January would be the time frame we were looking in terms of active recruitment.
Hi, Paul Johnson, I'm Service Manager for School Services, which includes a range of things, but the highlight of my working life is the travel training, for all the reasons that Gaynor's just talked about, the difference, and Councillor Mallinson. In terms of recruitment and how long, there is accredited training that new travel trainers go on, and they do go out with existing trainers, shadow and so on. But it's difficult to pin down a length of time because it depends on the experience and skills they bring. When we last had a round of recruitment, we recruited someone who's working in the IR at Forge Valley. So very familiar with some of our children and their needs and working with them. We recruited a Year 6 teacher. So they come with different skills and levels of understanding, which obviously can reduce some of the training time, and they can be out there sooner rather than later.
Did you just say, Mark, that already retention has been an issue, that we haven't retained?
I think that's not retention. I think it's a natural turnover. I think people actually obviously will come and look for other opportunities.
Councillor Haby.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Gaynor, for the testimony. I think it's a testimony that all parents with children with special educational needs would love to say the same and have that outcome. And I think this initiative is hoping for that with good intentions. I think parents aren't opposed to the beautiful outcome. I think it's just that small, you know, the cracks that we've been discussing and the words and the criteria used. For example, in regards to PTB first approach, how will the council ensure that young people who clearly cannot travel independently if they have severe or complex needs are automatically excluded from the PTB first approach without requiring parents to undergo a burdensome application process? And we know with appeals in the council it's sometimes slow, and parents are the ones to put in that exceptional time to get that outcome.
I think that's what we have said as part of our application process. When parents submit an application, we will make an assessment judgment. And if you're right, if PTB is not an option, we will not be offering PTB per se. I think that's definitely our preference as a local authority, but based on individual's child, their circumstances, if we know PTB will not work, we will not be offering PTB.
So yeah, so just on that one, while individual assessments are important, where you've just mentioned, families need transparent criteria and timely decisions. You know, a lot of families were opposed to this. I think it's that lack of transparency. So can you provide specific guidelines and expected timelines for these assessments?
So I think the assessment criteria is in the paper, I think, as various attachment. I think in terms of timeline, we can definitely look at, and this one the panels are, and we will publish it on the website.
Yes, if the revised proposal is approved today, a revised policy will be published very shortly, and then we'd open applications for post-16 SEN travel and transport. So that should happen in the next few days.
Thank you. And I guess the acknowledgement is a start, which you said we'll go into. But concrete support plans are necessary. So what specific measures are being implemented to support families, for example, facing employment challenges due to these policy changes?
A number of respondents, as you saw, had a fantastic level of engagement in the consultation, and quite a number of people raised concerns about that for the original proposal. And consultation's done what it's meant to do. We've gone away and reconsidered in light of that engagement. So no one will have something imposed on them. It's a choice. As well as other forms of travel support, which includes transport, this is a choice. If parents don't want it, they don't need to take it. If it were to be offered to them, as Mark said earlier, they can just contact us. There's no need. We're not going to put people through a formal appeal process, although one exists where it's needed. They would just simply contact us and say, thank you, but no, that's not going to suit our family or my child, and they can have transport at that point.
Thank you. I'm in support of that, training and that support for families. But it's the thing where you've mentioned they can contact the council. Oftentimes, so my sister has many children with special educational needs, and contacting the council is the hardest part of anything. So I think a lot of the criteria in the words are you can contact or we will be in response. So it's just ensuring that there's a clear criteria published before the parents decide to opt in for their children to use these services. So I think it's a lot more of muddy waters rather than them completely objecting from this. Just the last one before Dawn gets on to me, I can feel it. This is in regards to site congestion and school impact. So proactive planning is essential. What specific strategies are being developed in collaboration with schools to prevent congestions before they occur?
And I think this is what we're saying. That came out as a concern from a couple of schools. And because now PTB is optional, I think the pressure point is not there to address it straight away. However, we will be working with the schools to look at the increase in PTB and if it's starting to have an impact and develop those bespoke packages around transport for each school.
So, sorry, Toby, just the last point, but you mentioned monitoring the situation, and I feel like that's more reactive. What proactive measures are being implemented to address potential congestion from the outset? So, current spots in the city where you can, have a map where you know that this will be congested, and then put things in place before the travel train.
It's difficult to forecast at this stage because we don't know how many parents, which schools will have PTB. I think once we start to have that information, we can start mapping the impact, and then we can proactively work around how we do address it. At the moment, we know we've got 2,700 young people who are traveling on a daily basis. We know the schools they go to. And at the moment, the system is coping with the level of minibuses and taxis they've got. The issue would be if more and more parents start taking personal travel budget, and then there are more cars on the road. And that judgment would only be made once we've got the level of take-up for each school and where those children are traveling from.
Thank you. Last point, if that's okay. The term exceptional circumstances was thrown about a few times, and I was wondering, we need a clear definition to prevent inconsistent applications of what exceptional circumstances are. So, and we've been on the admissions committee, and exceptional circumstances is different for every single parent. So having a holistic definition probably won't be for the best. Could you specify the criteria that will be used to determine these cases? I think, like I said, this sounds like I'm against the bottom for it, and I would love a outcome for every parent like Gaynor has testified to us. But we just need that specific criteria before they opt in. That's okay.
I think it's very difficult to define because each application is looked at on an individual level in terms of that child or that young person's needs. So what are exceptional circumstances in one case might not be in another. And I know that sounds as if almost not answering the question, but it is genuinely on a case-by-case basis.
I think if you look at Appendix 3, so there we have tried to explain what exceptional circumstances would entail. So there is that broad categorization really of the issues that will come through. And again, as Paul says, you can't list everything possible as exceptional. We have got broader headings on the issues that we have or applications which have been submitted in the past to provide a bit of framework around it.
Thank you, Mark and Paul. I would say I'm still not quite confident on the actual clarity for parents, but I think something that could go out to parents ahead of schedule, where it shows different levels of criteria, or I guess case studies for different parents so they can read it and whether they relate to it or not. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haby. I think that is a really good idea, because for parents, you're right, it is the clarity, it's understanding the process and the systems and at what level, you know, my understanding is that when people will be applying, their first option would be PTB, but they can decline that and then move in to the original application that's always been there. But we need clarity, and parents need to be really clear about the process to be confident in it. I agree with that.
Spot on as to what Dawn said. We have experience of parents struggling to contact the council with their schools, whether it's EHCPs, and they feel like they're fighting the process. I just don't want to add one more blockage to that, where we're unprepared to deal with that kind of appeals.
In terms of, I'm not going to try to answer that from the council as a whole, but in terms of the assessment and training team, who are also the travel trainers, it's the same team. So looking at contact and how to get in contact with us, there is a team inbox that's monitored daily. There's a telephone number. We've got business support colleagues involved in managing that, so there shouldn't be any difficulties in contacting this particular team around these kinds of issues at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aries.
Thank you, Chair. And I do have some comments later at the appropriate time. Thanks. So my question, thank you, Mark, and thank you again for outlining the story of your specific circumstance with Robert, your son. But question to Mark, specific questions. The new panel for exceptional circumstances with SEND, social care and finance representation. My concern is, could that become overburdened with cases? That's my first question. Who sits on that panel? And is there? Forgive me, I'm new to this committee and may have responded to these in the past. But who actually sits on that panel? And is there elected member representation on that panel? Next question is, in the proposals, is there a period of review being proposed? I couldn't see that within the report. So, is there a period at which it will be reviewed to see whether or not he's working or not? And my final question, specific question is, have differential costs of scale been looked at to assist families with transport costs, as compared with the cost that the council might gain by providing services direct from the council? So have we looked at offering a sort of an arrangement whereby people that go for the personal travel plan can opt into purchasing, say, taxis or whatever public particular transport at a sort of a in terms of cost of scale, basically.
So in terms of elected members, at the moment, elected members are not part of the travel panel. I think members do hear appeals on the admission side, which has got some links back to the transport. And the reason to set up that exceptional panel is a lot of young people who will put application through the exceptional circumstances will have been known by social care, or they will have some level of interaction with the wider council services. To make sure that our decision making considers their circumstances, we want to make sure we bring in social care or SEND perspective into play before a decision is made. I think once we have started looking at the application, we will know whether the system is working or not. But for now, I think our view is that is the best approach to make sure our decision making is more holistic. In terms of
sorry, I just wanted to add, in terms of this exceptional cases panel, there are a reasonable number of applications we get, and this is for SEN travel support, where the children have no SEN needs. And it's because of family circumstances, it could be fleeing domestic violence, it could be parents' illnesses or disabilities and so on. So this is very much about transparency and bringing the right people with the right skills and knowledge into that decision making, because it is much wider than SEN travel.
In terms of question around looking at the cost differential, I think that's an area we've not looked at. We can actually possibly look at whether our PTB provides the appropriate level of funding to cover it. But I think the working assumption here is parents are using their own cars or their own vehicles or the family members to drop it. So the current cost covers what HMRC believe to be the rate that we should be providing in terms of covering the mileage. So our proposal is to cover that. Whether that could be translated into taxes, probably not. However, the working assumption is that parents are dropping their children and picking them up with family members as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Maroof.
Thank you, Chair. I've been embroiled in this for quite a few months now, and firstly I'd like to thank Gaynor for sharing your story with us, and I'm quite grateful that we stopped this report coming a few months ago so we could pause and answer some questions that parents had. But equally, what I would like to say before I get into my questions and observations, Chair, if I may, is that there were parents who wanted to ask questions here today as well. But unfortunately, because of the timescales, which some people are not aware of, to be honest, it takes a special person to be aware of our rules and regulations to say when you can actually get your questions in or not. We're unable to ask those questions here today, but I think it does fall on me to start sharing some of those questions they may well have asked here. Some of them are actually in the audience there, is in the audience there as well today. We had a meeting with parents quite some months ago, I think it was February time, when we heard some very, very emotional stories coming from people who were going to be affected by this. So if the report had gone in through the first time round, unfortunately there would have been some issues that would have developed from it. And I'm quite pleased that Councillor Haby and Councillor Aries and others have shared their concerns as well, which were the concerns of the parents at that particular time as well. And some of the stories, and one that really does stick in my mind was there was a lot of tears, and in terms of one parent saying that one of them would have to give up work, and by giving up work they were going to give up their house because they couldn't actually afford the mortgage, and this was all because of what was happening here. I didn't realise the enormity of the effects it would have been having on families, and I really did then. I was quite humbled by that. So a lot of this is being predicated on the back of financial savings. And I know, and don't shoot me down here, Chair, we as a local authority have many decisions to make across many different service areas. But for me in particular, this is a pretty important time in a lot of people's young lives and their lives moving forward. Maybe as an authority, we could take potentially different decisions, because this money does come from the general fund. If I'm correct, Mark, yeah. If it does come from the general fund, we do have the option to choose where that money is actually spent. And we're saying that we can't sort of fund this area. We did, as Lib Dems, and don't shout me down now, Chair, 2 months ago raised this in our budget amendment, saying that we should have travel trainers, and I'm pleased that that has now been taken on board. But if that was done 2 or 3 months ago, things might be different, but hindsight's such a wonderful thing that we can change things all the time, can't we? None of these things would happen. What I'm hearing from this is a good step forward. Don't get me wrong, I'm totally in favour of personal travel training, because that is what I think is the right thing to do. I've known people who've benefited from it immensely, and eventually when you get to 21 you're going to have to start learning other things as well, so maybe this is the good thing. What still concerns me, and what still sort of makes me a little bit uneasy, is a lot of these savings are projections. Good projections. Don't get me wrong, Mark, I think you're a wonderful accountant and you get them right most of the time. But these are projections. And these projections can quite easily go off course if we have a number of extra EHCPs. And we already know from what we see in the media and places that EHCPs are so far behind. I'm not saying for this council, but other councils, and probably this. People moving in, needing further EHCPs. That is going to put a further burden on the budget. And I can see it from the parents' perspective as well, because September is not very far away, and we're trying to implement a lot of these things by September, if I think I'm reading this correctly. We still haven't got the personal travel trainers in place. We are still out for getting funding from the mayoral authority. If there's extra money needed, presumably we will still need to go back to the general fund, etc. So I'm still seeing a lot of things that are not there at the present time. And I've got a great lengths to say, look, I do, like Councillor Haby said, we do support this. I can see where this is heading towards. But I don't think we're quite there at this moment in time. And that's where my feelings are at the present time, because I think there will be a lot of unrest for parents. And one good step that has actually been taken is these frequently asked questions and things. So I think that's been quite helpful. But that's something that we can build upon and build upon in the future. I think that gives the officers time and everybody else the time to make sure that this is actually implemented properly. In terms of what other people have said, trying to contact the council is quite difficult for a lot of people. And I must admit, I did raise your audit a few weeks ago, saying if you try to get hold of council tax or benefits, you can be waiting there for an hour or two, and then the telephone line drops. So I do see the concern there. Parents will be concerned about contacting the council. We think we'll never get to an area where everything is absolutely perfect, but at the moment, we do have that issue as well. And I hear what Paul has said as well, which is that there is a team there that is dedicated to this area and are contactable, but I can see there being an overwhelming number of people who will be contacting. And equally, there'll be some people whose English isn't the first language as well, and there will clearly be difficulties there. So I'm not quite there at the present time with all this. These are observations, Chair, not direct questions, because some of the questions have already been answered. So that's where I am at the moment, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Maroof. I don't expect officers just at the moment to answer, because if we're going to let politics get in the way of this process, which we've all been heavily involved in, and you're right, we did defer the decision to be made so that members of the public and parents and families did have a voice. And while I completely understand that members of the public do not know the timescales for submitting public questions, their elected members do. And members of the public who have been here today should have been informed of that by their elected members, so as not to be disappointed today. I understand that we've had conversations where you've explained to us and officers that you've actually met with members of your community that have come to you upset, rightly so. But at that point, you should have told your members when, if they wanted to submit public questions, when they could have done so. It is disappointing that you've come today and not been able to ask those questions. But what we have committed to is meeting, and I've met the members of the public today, but I've actually said that if there's still any unanswered questions from today's meeting, we would be happy to sit down and alleviate and change. This is not, this is a work in progress. Yes, we have to make a decision, but we still will be listening. And with regards to the budget amendment, for those of us that have been in member briefings, on weekly member briefings regarding this issue, you would have already known that conversations prior to the budget amendment that was put in were already being had with Simca and Sheffield College regarding funding for independent travel trainers. And what I would say is, with regards to finances, we are consistently put under pressure in this committee from Liberal Democrat members of the Finance Committee asking us what are we doing about our travel budget and how are we going to bring it down. So I think it's quite ironic to sit in this chamber today, in this committee, and say that you're not happy with this situation and it's about saving money. We've listened to members of the public, really concerned parents who are really worried about their children and about the impact that this is going to have on their life, and you've taken today as the decision to bring this today to upset people and make it into a political debate. This is where we do the politics, I agree. But actually, your points are muted because we've actually had these discussions. Thank you. So, officers, do you have questions for officers?
Can I come back on that, please? I'm not making this into politics. I'm actually concerned about the parents here. After hearing from what the parents have been saying, I think politics is all about listening to the people. And if you've made not the right choices, and being big enough to admit to the fact that we've probably not made some of the right choices here. And from what I've heard from the parents and my colleagues and others, and what stuff I've shared with yourselves, I think there is a circumstance when people can change their views on this. I've never said that the personal travel training issue is something that we don't support. We do support that fully, but it has to be in the right way and the right climate for it to happen. And I've said everything else that I've said, so I just wanted to make it clear that for me this is not a political debate.
Thank you. I'll move on now. Did you have any questions for officers? Or officers want to respond? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Mallinson, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have sat on the Finance Committee and I'm aware of the sort of dichotomy that we're experiencing here. But I can't understand why there would be any reluctance to move forward on this proposal, particularly given the level of consultation that's happened and the moves that have been made to accommodate those concerns. I think that there is one aspect which I wanted to raise, which we haven't talked about, which is really, really crucial to it, and is part of the great deal of thought that has gone into this proposal, particularly in the light of the consultation, and that is that the bringing in I'll just start again. It is actually very difficult to have a one-size-fits-all in terms of assessing who should or shouldn't have PCB or who can have travel training. Every child is different, every family situation is different. We've heard that there is a board which does really look into it for each individual. It might be interesting to hear what appeal process there is if there is a conflict there, but hopefully in the vast majority of cases it is resolved by dialogue and by knowledge and in a reasonable way, and an understanding that you can't have a set of rules when you're dealing with complex individual circumstances. What I particularly like is the way in this report it's been embedded into the EHCP process. So there's it's important that travel training and the ability to engage with that is discussed in the annual EHCP meetings with young people and their parents, so that it becomes embedded in the process. It becomes an embedded process that moves young people forward to develop as far as they can. Some can develop further than others, obviously. So that we have a much more forward-looking process. So I just want to commend where we've got to, and I think it's really important we move forward now, because as you articulated, there are huge financial pressures as well. The last thing we want is to be for the council to literally hit the buffers financially, and we would then be run by commissioners who would just scrap post-16 travel. So let's move forward with what we've got, which is, I think, very well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Whittaker?
Just quickly, I'd just like to say that this whole process has actually caused me sleepless nights. That's nothing to do with politics. That's down to me personally and the interaction that I've had with parents and the amount of emails that I've received with parents pouring their heart out. Now, I've still had those emails in the last few days. So the question and answer is it's been really, really beneficial for me personally. And if we're still getting parents feeling that way, is there something we're not doing right? So we're clearly, if we've produced a report, it's in the public domain, we've now got frequently asked questions, which are excellent, and yet we've still got parents with issues. And for me, it's about reassuring those parents, it's about being open and honest, and it's absolutely nothing to do with politics, because this is people's lives. This is the young people in our city, which this committee always wants to do the best for children and young people in our city. And if we've got parents who are still worried and anxious, upset, having to think they're going to make all sorts of changes to their lives, then clearly we're not addressing those issues. And that's what I'm having sleepless nights about, that potentially families are still thinking that we're making that, or we're potentially going to make their lives more difficult. So it's absolutely categorically. And as you know, Dawn, I've attended every single briefing, you know, read this agenda a few times, was reading it again at 7 o'clock this morning, you know, so that I felt it was clear in my mind. And yeah, I do think the independent travel training, absolutely brilliant, and it needs to carry on, and it needs to, you know, for those young people it's suitable for, the opportunity needs to be there. But I almost feel like we haven't quite got there with it. It's ongoing. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker, and I do thank you for your commitment to this committee this year and all of the briefings that you have been to. If you've not missed any, I do appreciate that. Thank you. I've got, just on your comments, Councillor Whittaker, regarding parents not knowing enough and not feeling confident, I wonder if, following on from this meeting, although I have arranged to say that we will meet with families that have attended today, and I'm aware that lots won't have been here, whether or not we could do another online session for families to be able to log into, to listen and to ask questions. I would hope that as members we would help our constituents organise, and as families, and we could probably speak to our parent carer forum, so that we can keep the dialogue going, keep the conversation going, just, you know, keep answering people's questions and working with parents. Is that something that we could do?
Yeah, I think we can organise that, and I think if there are questions, I think if parents can start sending it to us, we can start adding those to the FAQ really, and just make sure that is public available. So we just keep adding more questions and answers to clarify if needed.
Thank you. I just don't want this to be this is what we're doing and that's it. I think that we continue to have that relationship with families so that we make sure we're getting it right. And then, if that is that okay? Okay, thank you. Councillor Aries.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of the importance of independent travel training, but we want to get this right. As elected members are aware, I sit on the Adult Health and Social Care Policy Committee, where we spent a lot of time and energy developing the new Adult Health and Social Care Strategy and delivering a plan to set out our vision for up to 2030, called Living the Life You Want to Live. And there's, for members of the public, there's an easy read version on the council website, and I'm pleased that the all-age autism strategy, which will cover transitions, and that's on the work programme for this committee. But a key part of the Living Your Life You Want to Live strategy revolves around safeguarding and the duties we have under the Care Act. And that was developed through co-production with service users and the workforce, as you will be aware, Chair. And I did attend that online meeting on the 26th of February with a large number of parent carers of the post-16 SEND students, and almost every single one had a story to tell about how a PTB couldn't work for their particular family. And I appreciate that Gaynor, in your particular circumstance, and probably for quite a significant number of people, it does work, and for your son Robert. But for a number of people, that certainly they were concerned that it wouldn't work for their particular family, and the issues I see have been touched on in the report on the feedback from the consultation: money issues, economy, budget. Councillor Maroof I won't repeat them, but Councillor Maroof has mentioned them. So I think that these were parts of the reason why my concerns about these exceptional circumstances panel becoming overburdened if we don't get it right at the outset. I think that I'll leave it there because I think that Councillor Maroof has made a lot of the comments I was going to make.
Thank you, Councillor Aries. Oh, I'll bring Gaynor in and then I'll bring Mark in. Thank you.
Just to respond, at the time when Rob was assessed for travel training, he was at that point where we could move forward. If you'd have asked me 18 and a half months ago, was my son a suitable candidate for travel training, it would have been an emphatic no, because at that period in his life, he was suffering quite a severe mental health crisis. So for me, that would have been our exceptional circumstances. I would have felt that he could not participate because of his health issues. So I would have been there as well. I think what, having over the years, having dealt with lots of departments from SEN, transport and other healthcare professionals, I think moving forward, I would like to see more parental involvement, more consultation from parents, more parents coming on board, and when you're discussing where you're going to go with your policies, that you actually talk to the people who it actually affects. I think then you might, I can understand why a lot of parents, it's quite scary to think about it, but I do think you could perhaps improve that. I mean, I'm just looking at, the frequently answered questions. This would, to me, would have alleviated some of my fears, especially the one where it's not compulsory. Nobody's going to come along and say, you must have independent travel. But I think, like you're talking about having further meetings, I do think bringing parents on board when you're looking at changing policies and looking at services for children, and as my son is an adult, actually having us on those consultation meetings so that you are working with us, not at us.
I agree. Thank you, Gaynor. I think everybody's nodding. Everyone agrees. I do think we did work with Parent Care Forum, but this is something we've got to carry on doing, like you said, Gaynor, through all of our processes, through all of our policies, because it does impact everything. Every decision we make impacts children and their families on this committee. So we do need to do more co-production, more co-design, and just have more conversations. Mark, did you want to come in?
I think, again, as already probably alluded to that, I think we are very clear that personal travel budget is no longer mandatory. It's a choice. For some families, it will work, and for those families who think it will work, they can have it. For those who don't think that will work for them, we will not be forcing anybody to take personal travel budget. And the same thing with independent travel training. It is about the child's ability, and I think once through the ESCP process and through the interaction with the school and Senkos, when the child is ready, only then we will be offering them independent travel training. Again, it will not be forced on anyone that they need to go down independent travel training route.
Thank you. I think whilst we've just agreed to have a online conversation with parents, I think if this policy is passed today, we need an ongoing, maybe, I don't want to call it scrutiny, but bring it back, if we can bring it back regularly for updates. How are we getting on? Have we had many appeals? How are parents feeling? Because it is about if it's working for families. If we can decide how we're going to do that publicly, I think would be a really good way forward, because this, I see this as a fantastic opportunity. I see it as adding extra options to an already to a service which we already deliver. So we already deliver taxis and minibuses and other forms of travel support. But this feels like we're just adding more options, and none of it is going to be forced upon anyone, But we need to be, like other members have mentioned, we need to be really clear about how that process is working. Is it working? If it's not working, what we're going to do about it. So I think if we can make sure that this stays on our agenda throughout our work programme, where we do a regular review of processes and link that back to families and get feedback from families, how it's working for them, that would be very much, I'm sure, appreciated by all members. Councillor Maroof.
Just a point from my side. In terms of what you said, Mark, earlier about the personal travel trainers, did you say that this work is ongoing and it's happening now? And it will continue to happen, whatever the outcome here is today?
So we've got independent travel training already as a council. So we've got 5 workers who are already providing that travel training. So the Gaynor son went through that process. What we wanted to expand that at a much larger scale. I think so. We want to start targeting younger people, pre-16, post-16. So we want to increase the number of travel trainers available because we have got a large cohort of young people who could benefit from that.
And this will affect, the way you vote today will affect whether there will be additional independent travel trainers. So there are 5 currently, but depending on how you vote will affect whether the business case to Simca goes through.
Could I just add, part of the vision for this, we're referring to the assessment and training officers as travel trainers, as we commonly do, but this is bigger than that. So when we talk about engaging with primary phase and doing work in classrooms with schools, with secondary, working closely with the college, etc., we could never have enough travel trainers, to be frank, because of the scale of this. So some of their job will be about working with stakeholders and with other council services who are involved with vulnerable children and families to enable them to be able to help around this. Some of the levels of needs don't really require the independent travel trainers input. It can just be confidence and route planning. So part of this additional resource is to be able to actually work and help ensure that that massive workforce out there in schools, colleges, and to enable parents to understand and provide toolkits for them. So I just wanted to add, there's a lot of added value stuff here, which will hopefully mean in the long term, less young people, less children need to be on transport in the first place because we're approaching independence in a different way.
Thank you. So just for clarity then, as part of this, the personalised travel budget is the new bit, the bit that we're not already doing, which we're proposing that we do. The independent travel training is something that we already do, which we've been doing for a number of years now, and lots of people have benefited from that. But the proposal here is to expand that. So depending on, as Meredith alluded to, how this is voted upon will depend on whether or not that happens. And then, yeah. So are we clear? Do you need any more clarity on that, anyone? No? Did I make that clear, or have I just... Is that clear? Okay. Councillor Maroof.
If we're going to the vote, can we as a group have a few minutes?
Yep. Everyone for coming back in. So at this point we are going to move to the vote on this item. I will read out the recommendations, which are quite lengthy, so if you bear with me. So it is recommended that the Education, Children and Families Policy Committee approve the following. Personal travel budgets, or PTBs, for existing post-16 students of Year 11 students currently accessing SEN travel support. Personalised travel budgets will be introduced as an optional choice for this cohort, and families will have the flexibility to either opt for PTBs or transport. Independent travel training may also be offered if appropriate. For students not currently accessing SEN travel support, who are now applying for post-16 travel support from September 2025, personalised travel budgets will become the first offer for new post-16 students requiring home-to-school travel support, with alternative transport options available where necessary. and applications, families will be provided with detailed information about personalised travel budgets when applying for post-16 travel support. It is also recommended that we approve the expansion of independent travel training. The Freedom to Travel Skills for Life programme will further be developed, expanding its scope to provide enhanced independent travel training for post-16 students with special educational needs and disabilities. This initiative aims to empower students to develop essential travel skills, fostering greater independence. Initially focusing on post-16 students, there are plans to extend this programme to younger age groups in the future, promoting early acquisition of these vital skills. And subject to funding, investment will be made in hiring additional travel trainers between 6 and 12 positions to support the expansion of the programme. It is also asked that we approve the increase in fees for young people on taxi and minibus provision. A proposed increase in the fees for post-16 taxis and minibus users will be subject to consultation and I'm assured will be brought back to this committee. Future fee increases will be reviewed annually, ensuring adjustments are based on a comprehensive evaluation of current fee levels and the needs of the service. Thank you. So, if we move to the vote, Councillor Maroof.
First of all, can I thank you so much for allowing us the time to actually discuss this. We think it's a very serious subject and we needed to have a discussion and be comfortable with it. So thank you so much for that. We will be supporting it, but on the proviso that we believe in personal travel training and independent travel training. So I'll start with that. So that was helpful for us to go out and discuss that. What we would like is that no parent will ever be forced into a situation where they don't get the support that they need in terms of actual transport, because that's where the main concern has been from parents, and that's where the angst lies. So we want reassurance that that will never, ever happen. Otherwise, we were going to vote against it, to be honest. Consultation will continue with parents as an ongoing basis with immediate effect and continue as long as it needs to continue, because what we have produced here, and just please indulge me for a minute or so because I think this is terribly important, one of the most important decisions we've taken in this committee probably this year. What has been produced here has been an excellent piece of work, and yes, I agree that we have had discussions with each other behind the scenes and for hours on end, and Mark and all the team have been discussing this. And credit to the team as well that they've actually started to produce these things, so because we do consider the parents' views on this one. We have regular feedback to this committee, which already you've agreed to, Chair. So I would just reinforce that and say that we do totally support that, and that is actually brought back here on a regular basis. And finally, do correct me if I get anywhere wrong here, but meeting with parents is arranged ASAP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maroof. Did we get all that down? And will that? Yeah? No, that's good. No, I think it's really important because this is, you know, we do. You're right, Councillor Maroof and Councillor Mallinson. We meet and you know we meet weekly to discuss this sort of thing, and it is really important that we do keep this dialogue going. That this is not, you know, well, we'll just carry on doing consultation and then it fizzle out. We need to create a space where parents, if they are unhappy or if they don't feel like they're being supported, can come and speak to us. So whether we have a counsellor online drop-in quarterly, or whether we have a meeting with officers, if we can develop something, filter that back in so that all parents know that there's an ear and there is someone who's available to them. I know Councillor Mallinson, you've said you would want to be part of that as well, because sometimes it's good for us as members on this committee to be able to hear the voice of parents and feed that back in. So have we got, so on that, with the slight amendment and addition to the recommendation, sorry, just some legal advice.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to...
Oh, yes, Meredith.
So absolutely, getting the meeting with parents online, but we do need to make sure we're using Sheffield Parent Carer Forum as well, as they are, as you referred to, Councillor, they are the group that is contracted by the DFE and ourselves to represent parents as well, and do that work with us. So we will make sure it's with Parent Carer Forum as well.
Thank you. So with all that agreed, we will go to the vote. Can I ask everyone to vote for? Everyone for? Can I get a show of hands, please? For? Unanimous. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to members of the public that have attended today as well. We will get your details. I'm sure your elected members may have got them so that we can sit and have a conversation if you require us to do so. Thank you. Okay, so we now move on. Gosh, we've got lots of scribbles on here. We now move on to agenda item number 10, which is on page 93 of your agenda pack, and that's DCS update. Meredith, over to you.
Start by putting my microphone on. Thank you, councillors. If I can take you through the report very quickly, there's quite a lot of information within here. A number of the paragraphs are related to papers which were on committee but have been included within this report. Starting off, I think it's really important to remind you that we are going through quite a substantial amount of transformation within the world of children's. The areas of focus continue to be the ones that have been brought to you over the last municipal year. But in addition, we're also focusing in on alternative curriculum and education and healthcare plans and the quality, timeliness and communication of those. What I also have failed to report is in the first paragraph the information about the local child safeguarding practice review that the national panel has asked us to undertake, which will be looking to be published within 6 months. There is caveats where that may not happen, if it will impact children and families, but that work is beginning and is undertaken by the Children's Safeguarding Partnership. We've given you information about admissions, which is again really successful in comparison to nationally, and the number of children who have their first preference school. Also, the children's residential service and children's homes, again, that trajectory of improving quality of provision and the work that is taking place there. You have had recently a report on that. We've given you an update on the childcare reforms as well, which is comprehensive and will hopefully help you with understanding where we are going with that journey. We also have the information that has been requested by yourselves around academisation. I apologise, in 1.4.2 it says conversion programme. That should read the DFE conversion programme. It's not the council's conversion programme to academies. It is the DFE conversion programme, which gives you the information. You know that belonging is absolutely fundamental to our way of working. It's our tier 1 strategy, how we're ensuring that children belong in Sheffield. Within that context, we also know that we have a number of children who are excluded and are not in schools, whether that be through elective home education and other areas where they are not in school. So we again have given you an update on that piece of work, and I will be looking to bring something more substantial to you for the beginning of the next academic year, because it is an area we really need to focus on. And then you're also given an update on sufficiency and education sufficiency. I'm happy to take any questions, but hopefully that report also fills the areas that you were looking to get updates on. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Any questions for Meredith on this report this month? No? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Councillor Mallinson, you will need to be quicker.
Thank you, and thanks for the work that's gone into the report, Meredith. Just want to raise something, a general comment really, about the quality of provision and stuff, the way things are measured and everything, which is still very much based on results, you know, very almost Ofsted related in a sense, and doesn't pick up on the increasingly urgent need in education to improve well-being of both, well, staff and children actually, but particularly obviously the children, and to formulate ways of measuring that, particularly in conjunction with bodies like Learn Sheffield, so that we can try and improve education in Sheffield in more ways than just crude measures being passed on to us by the Department of Education. We should be trying to improve happiness, well-being, and through that improve the results, because happy young people who are motivated are much more likely to get a genuine education than those who just go through a more of a treadmill approach.
Thank you, Councillor Mallinson. That's absolutely part of the belonging framework and strategy, and also links in with a number of pieces of work which are taking place. Stephen Betts, who's Chief Executive of Learn Sheffield, will be presenting a paper on outcomes, but Learn Sheffield have also been commissioned to pull together the SEND manifesto, which is the direction of travel for our children with SEND, and also conversations about alternative provision, alternative curriculum, all of which are looking to ensure that we are working with our schools and with other partners to make sure we are looking at how we support children to be the very best. And there are many of our schools who are already undertaking that work. There is, and I'm sure Stephen will refer to this, there is a disconnect between the level of good and outstanding schools and also sometimes inclusion within those schools, and also our attainment. Ofsted's new framework is very much looking at how children do belong in their schools. That's not being implemented yet, but that is the next stage of that Ofsted framework process. And again, I'm putting Stephen on the spot, but he might be able to talk to that as well. So I think it is something that as a city, and actually as leaders in education, people are committed to that. It's how we make sure that we have all the right tools to ensure that schools are supported, children are supported, and staff are supported within that as well.
Thank you, Meredith. This paper is just for noting at this point, so thank you very much for that. So we now move on to agenda item number 11, which is on page 109 of your agenda pack, which is the pupil outcomes in Sheffield school settings and the impact of Learn Sheffield Commission. And we've got Pat Buttrill and Stephen Betts today. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Chair. This briefing draws on the Sheffield Performance Analysis 2024, which is a comprehensive review of educational outcomes across the city, developed in partnership with Sheffield City Council and Learn Sheffield. This analysis, led by Kate Wilkinson from Learn Sheffield, provides an evidence base for understanding the current landscape of education in Sheffield and highlights the areas of strength as well as key policy and practice. I would like to hand over to my colleague Stephen Betts, and I do believe we have some.
We do. We do have some slides, but I'll talk briefly to what we've talked about, and then we can go wherever you want to go in terms of the conversation, if that's okay. So I think we shared two papers in advance. One was a condensed slide deck around the outcomes and the performance, and the other one was the report, was the paper. I suppose the paper just draws colleagues' attention to what is commissioned. So 4 things are commissioned, which is writing moderation, SATs and phonics screening monitoring, head teacher support for head teacher recruitment in maintained schools, and support for the Ofsted inspection process, basically, generally in maintained schools, but sometimes more widely. There has this year been an extension to that. There's been an additional sum of money. So the original commission's about 50,000. The additional amount is about 40,000. And the additional amount is to support improvement in writing in primary. So the paper outlines the two parts to that. So we've been doing some additional moderation to support schools and enable them to target their writing curriculum appropriately. And then we're now moving on to a piece of work to look at writing, the quality standards for writing in the non-statutory year groups. So in year 1, year 2, year 3, 4 and 5, essentially. Moving on to the outcomes piece, I think last time we talked about this, I will have talked about the disparity between our Ofsted outcomes and our pupil outcomes. We will have talked about rising complexity and rising vulnerability in terms of our cohort, and both of those things have exacerbated in the last year. So in Ofsted terms, and I will pick up Toby's point in a second about the validity of this as the sole measure of quality of education in schools. But in terms of Ofsted outcomes, Sheffield has continued to improve. It, for the third year, outperforms national. Colleagues will remember that if we go back sort of 10 years or so, Sheffield would have been about 10 percentage points below national. So that's a kind of long-term improvement that's then been sustained over a period of time. I suppose the headlines in that would be, for all schools in Sheffield, we ended last year just over 92% of schools were good or better, and in the primary sector we touched 96% for the first time at the end of last year. So the Ofsted outcomes have improved. Actually, our pupil outcomes relative to national have slightly worsened, and you see that across all of the cohorts from early years all the way through to Key Stage 4. So I suppose the two themes I would draw out from the slides, particularly where we finish in terms of the pieces of work that are intended to be done this year and into through to the end of the calendar year. There's two things in nature. One is pieces of work that are about better understanding something in order to make better decisions about it, which generally is about a deeper, more comprehensive look at the information. And then the second theme would be pieces of work that are designed to identify what is working. So, for example, in attendance, which we know has been an issue for Sheffield over a period of time, actually we saw some improvements in attendance last year. But we still have a significant way to go in terms of being at a national average. The two things that happened last year in attendance was a working group, a multi-agency working group, which was chaired by Greg Fell, which enabled us, I think, to have some wider conversations about what the challenges are and how that looks. And then a report which was done by Helen Lane from Learn Sheffield, where she went to 10 settings that outperform their context. So not the 10 with the highest attendance, but 10 settings where they outperform what you might expect in their context, which obviously is a piece of data work, and then visiting the schools to talk about what they're doing. And that was very much about, these are some things that are working in Sheffield schools to improve attendance. So those tend to be the two kind of approaches that we're trying to take all the time. Can we better understand the issue, and can we understand and share what are those things that are working? Shall I pause there? And I'm happy to kind of go through more detail, but I've done this a number of times, and invariably I either give too much information or not enough information, so I'll hand over at this point.
Thank you, Stephen. Has anyone got any questions or comments for Stephen at this point, or are we happy for him just to carry on? Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so I suppose I'm just going to pick out a few things from the slides, if that's okay. Just things I'd want to draw your attention to that I haven't said already. I think if you look at the fourth slide, which is about pupil characteristics, I think that gives you some detail in there around the complexity of cohort and the increasing complexity and vulnerability of cohort. So that top middle graphic which is looking at which young people have access to free school meals, have special educational needs, and have English as an additional language. We're now comfortably over half of our pupils have at least one of those three characteristics. And actually, if you add up the combined ones, you've got just over 16,000 children in Sheffield who have two or three of those characteristics. When I talked before about better understanding the data, often that's a conversation about the intersectionality of the data. It's about the complexity of specific characteristics, but actually young people don't conform to specific characteristics, do they? So they may well have a number of those characteristics, and it's trying to understand the cohort in more detail in relation to that. Around the SEND slides, which are sort of slides 5, 6, and I think 7, the thing I would draw your attention there to, which I've done before, so apologies if I'm banging on a little bit about it, but would be speech, language, and communication. So we will talk a lot, for very good reason, about a number of primary needs in terms of SEND, but we should be clear that speech, language, and communication is the highest incidence of all of our needs. And if you think back to the report that we did last year, we've got a pretty good evidence base for thinking that we under-identify. So it's already the highest need, but actually we would suggest that we probably only identify just over half of the young people in the city with that need. Again, SEND primary needs and secondary needs overlap. Young people don't tend to fit neatly into a box, but if we're focusing on a range of issues in relation to SEND, then speech, language, and communication needs to be one of those. In terms of, we've talked about the attendance already, so I'll skip over that. And I think if it's okay, I'll just draw your attention to two things. One is on slides 9 and 10, we look at the analysis of outcomes, as in pupil outcomes, by attendance band. So that is, if you remember from last year, something we've started to do to try and understand the relationship between attendance and attainment. And it's pretty clear. It's a straightforward thing. I mean, I think I probably said last time, as an ex-head teacher, it comes as a relief to find that going to school does in fact improve your attainment. It's kind of obvious, isn't it, that would be the case. But the absolute clarity of when your attendance drops below 90%, your chance of achieving the standard that is expected at your age, it basically halves, is a fairly useful kind of way of thinking about this. So when we're thinking about attendance, we are really clear that, sitting here, if I could do one thing to improve our attainment outcomes, it would be to raise our attendance. I'm not suggesting that's the whole piece, but it's a significant part of it. Thinking about exclusions and suspensions on slide 11, you'll notice that we're suggesting that we produce an insight report, as we've done in key areas before, in relation to this year. I think we will do that obviously in conjunction with some of the kind of stakeholder groups, that we would want to work to on that, including the head teacher partnerships, but also I think probably the Anti-Racist Alliance, and we'd want to have that conversation in the context of the Race Equality Commission, and as Fatima as the Race Equality Commission lead. We will produce that this year. It is one of those areas where intersectionality is really complex, and I think a deeper piece of work on that would be helpful in trying to understand what sits underneath those figures, which are challenging for sure. Moving on to slide 12, in terms of attainment, I'm just going to pick out some of the contextual numbers at the top, if that's okay, in terms of outcomes. So the gap between attainment in Sheffield and national is between 2 and 5 percentage points, depending on where we look in the continuum from early years through to GCSEs. That translates to around between 125 and about 250 pupils. That's what we're talking about within a year group. Just underlining my point about attendance, if you look to the third bullet point, we know that less than half of the young people below 90% will reach that standard. and that represents about 1,250 pupils in every primary year group and about 1,500 pupils in every secondary year group. So if you kind of translate those two pieces of maths together, 1 or 2 in 10 pupils currently below 90%, improving their attendance to above 90% and then achieving that standard is exactly the gap between Sheffield and National. So just in terms of, I appreciate people like me will rock up and talk about, you know, percentages of this and proportions of that, but I think sometimes it's helpful to think in actual pupils. About 10, 15, 20% at most of those pupils below 90% improving their attendance and then being able to reach the standard, to achieve the standard that they're supposed to achieve at their age, would be the difference between Sheffield being below National and at National. So it just gives you a kind of sense of proportion, I think. I think that's probably everything I was going to say, really. We've talked about the final slide, which is slide 21, which picks out the pieces of work that we intend to do and kind of cross references to the document. So we can pick that up through any questions. Last thing I'll say is just to say, if you are I'm trying to pick an right phrase. I can't think of a correct phrase. I'm going to go glutton for punishment. If you are a glutton for punishment, then it's worth saying that the full performance analysis is about 85 slides. There is a lot of detail there, and that's where these slides are taken from, and that's published on the Learn Sheffield website. Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Has anybody got any questions or comments for Stephen on this? Councillor Mallison.
Yeah, I guess in some ways it's following on from what I was saying earlier. It is interesting that we're doing well in relation to Ofsted, but we're not necessarily doing well in relation to results. I mean, even if you're just measuring those crude academic results and not anything else. And you're pointing out that that might be linked to our attainment levels. And attainment levels are often, maybe not always, in relation to children feeling comfortable in school and wanting to go to school. So there's a sort of potential vicious or virtuous circle there in terms of making schools places that children enjoy rather than being somewhere where they're pushed through to get the best results, which might be what Ofsted likes to see, but isn't necessarily child-centred. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Always happy to comment. So I think we have seen over the past sort of 5 to 10 years probably, Ofsted's the focus on pupil outcomes become slightly less high profile in the evidence base in inspection. It has been more about the intent implementation and then the outcomes of curriculum improvement. I think we're seeing probably it go back up a little bit in terms of the focus on it by inspectors, and I think we probably will expect that to continue into next year. I think you raise a really interesting point, and I kind of agree with the premise of it. I think I've talked about attainment. I suppose the word that I would put next to attainment as equally important is engagement. So we need to be there. We need to attend. We need to feel that we belong, we need to feel that we're comfortable, and that's part of that ability to then engage. And then we would talk about overcoming those barriers to learning, wouldn't we? Which are about a whole range of challenges as well. We're in a slightly unusual place, aren't we? Linking back to the conversation between you and Meredith just before we sat down, in terms of there is a bit of uncertainty at this point, I think, in terms of where we're going in terms of DFE and where we're going in terms of Ofsted. I think we're not going to know that for a little while, and I think it will be well into next year before we understand exactly what that looks like. Various things have been published for consultation. My life experience is that when the DFE publishes something for consultation, pretty much regardless of the consultation, it then goes into policy. But we seem to be seeing that not happening very quickly in this space. So the conversation around report cards, which could be an interesting conversation about what we care about and what we measure, but at the moment perhaps isn't shaping up in that way, is perhaps still up for discussion, I think. Yeah.
Just in terms of specifics, or maybe there isn't any, but what is anything being done across the city to improve the student experience, to encourage more students to attend who may have poor attendance?
So it is that conversation is definitely happening. It was definitely a feature of the attendance report, and it's part of that conversation. I suppose if I was to point to one thing in terms of pieces of work at the moment, which I think can have an impact on that over time, I think it's probably the SEND work around the healthy child development, and trying to get to that space where we have a shared, across education, health and care, we have a shared understanding of what are the features of healthy child development, what's the holistic and connected version of that, because that's the thing that can inform our practice, whether we are a school, whether we are a service, whether we are a family, whatever our role is in supporting young people as they through their childhood and into their adolescence. That's the piece of work which I think can probably kickstart the conversation about what matters, what makes the biggest difference.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else got any comments? Councillor Bannister.
Yeah, just want to ask about the speech and language thing, really. Do we have anything specifically in place to improve that? Because obviously it's the largest characteristic we need to help with. Obviously the people going to school is great and there's the obvious correlation there. But if they're at school and not understanding what they're being taught, then yeah, problems. Thanks.
It definitely is a problem, definitely. So I think again that's part of the SEND manifesto piece of work in terms of that development. The key to that work is that we get a genuine partnership, which I think we've now got, and a shared accountability between education, health and care. So speech, language and communication is not just about a service. It's about how you get to a balanced model. In terms of, so what's the universal part of that supports all young people, what's the targeted part of that for those young people who need something additional, and then what's the specialist part of it, which is about how the more specialist support for young people with particularly challenging needs. I think I would say in general, and this is a Sheffield point, but it's probably a national point actually, in the last little while the focus has been very much on the specialist end of that triangle. And I think part of the SEND manifesto work is about making sure that we have that joined up, coherent, balanced model that supports young people at all stages in that process. Obviously, the Children's Hospital and the speech, language and communication therapy team are crucial to this, but it is broad. This isn't just on them. This is about the wider partnership and how we address young people, how we identify and address need across the cohort.
That's it. It's very easy to hit the high end because they're the most obvious people, but yes, picking up the more kind of low level stuff to stop it from getting to the high end first is the way forward. Thanks. And
I think there's a kind of key principle there that we should kind of hold to, which is that small problems become big problems. So everything that we do upstream is always, more effective. I'm going to say better value for money as well, because I can't kind of help myself. But it's, it is both of those things, and I think that guiding principle of small problems become big problems is a key part of the SEND manifesto.
Thank you, Stephen. So no more questions or comments on this item. That brings us, thank you for coming. We always enjoy hearing what you're doing in Learn Sheffield. That brings us to the end of the meeting, but also to the end of the municipal year on this committee. So I would just like to, if you can indulge me for 1 minute, I would just like to thank all members who've been on this committee and who have worked tirelessly throughout the year. Although we've not always agreed on everything, we've always managed to come to a resolution for the best outcomes for the children and families of the city, which I think is really important. I'd like to thank parents, those that are watching, those that have been, those that we've consulted with, our foster carers and parents throughout the year through different policies. I'd like to thank them for their input, and just to reassure families that may be watching that, you will be heard through this committee. We will continue to develop ways in which we can communicate with yourselves, with our young people, with our partners, to deliver better outcomes for children and young people in the city. So that's a commitment from me, and I'd just like to also thank members and I'd like to thank officers who have worked tirelessly throughout the year, and to our visitors who've been to this committee to present to us. So thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see you all next municipal year. Thank you.